Welcome to Sounding Board, the discussion podcast about freedom and capitalism, brought to you, recorded live somewhere in Cambridgeshire. Good evening.
Good evening.
Do you like my intro?
Yeah, I'm not sure about you. Had a go at me about saying, and we're live. And
Yeah,
now
no,
we're live again.
I was trolling. It said it on the board.
Right. Okay.
I'm just trying to be funny.
Anyway, what are we talking about?
You wanted to talk about Lisa Nandy.
I did.
In general, I think in general, the Labour leadership candidates. Now,
Yeah.
where this may take us, I don't know. But there's a Labour leadership election happening. They're dragging it out as the Labour Party like to do with their crazy rules. My understanding is that What's the Chops has just been knocked out. The shadow foreign secretary who really doesn't like white vans and England flags.
Thornbury.
Thank you very much. I was panning for time there. Emily Thornbury's now been knocked out because, again, about the crazy rules of... She needs to be nominated by... There are like these official affiliated organisations in the Labour Party, aren't they? Whether they are constituency Labour organisations, trade unions, the Fabian Society, whatever else. They all get like a say, don't they? And you need to get a certain number of these in order to get past certain thresholds in certain ballots. She didn't, so she's out. So we're left with Keir Starmer, Lisa Nandy, Rebecca Long Bailey. Is it just those three that are the leadership candidates? Because obviously you've got your Richard Bergens and people like that.
Yeah, Richard Bergen.
Deputy.
Who's the? I'm not.
Not
even
Jess
sure.
Phillips, but
The other one. I can never remember her name.
yeah, because
Her.
she's not very memorable, is she?
No.
Other than for being a bit dim. But anyway,
It could
You had a-
be
you had-
any of them.
I think you've got a point about Lisa Nandy. And
Yeah, Lisa Nandy and Richard Bergen in particular have come to my attention because
Yes.
they're obnoxious.
Or Dawn Butler, is she another one, or is she just campaigning?
I think she's just campaigning.
Right.
She
okay.
said some pretty awful things recently as well.
Remind our listener and viewer.
So Dawn Butler, the most recent thing is that a child is born without sex, not without gender, which you could easily argue is just a social construct and doesn't really exist anyway, so nobody cares about it. But a child is born without sex.
That's just crazy talk,
Believable.
isn't it? Yeah. Let's just leave that there and move on. I don't think we need to go into it.
Yeah, I don't think we need to. So if we want to stick,
But they're trying to make that view mainstream.
well, let's stick on the transgender debate at the moment.
Right.
So this is one of the things that Lisa Nandy spoke about recently.
Are you
So-
having trouble getting a haircut? You've seen that tweet.
I did, yeah, I did. I retweeted that saying this is absolutely appalling hair privilege, and I'm
Hair
offended.
privilege.
I hope you're all offended on my behalf. Please retweet to raise awareness.
So you and I are oppressed
We are oppressed.
because we are follically challenged.
It was. I think I referred to that BBC tweet as being violence against me.
Right. Okay. I hope they remove that tweet then.
Of course not. But anyway, so this is Lisa Nandy is at one of her rallies,
Yeah.
surrounded by all her supporters, obviously.
And she's like the least loony lefty.
You would think
she's
so.
she's a bit more on the Blairite side of things.
Yeah, if you so let me. Do you want me to read out what she said?
Oh, if you got it, yeah, I didn't realise you had it.
So she was asked a question. So a feminist asked her a question about.
A feminist asked her a question.
I think it was a feminist. Yeah.
Right.
Asked her about women's rights and transgender women in prison, and she gave the specific example of Christopher Wharton, who was a convicted child rapist.
Right.
Who now goes by the name of Zoe something or other.
Right.
So this is one of the worst human beings alive, and
Right.
as a specific example,
We're talking serial
child
paedophily.
rape. Yeah,
Right. Okay.
unbelievable. So she said he has asked. He's now he is self-identified as a woman.
Right.
He wants his crimes to be recorded as a woman, and he wants to be in a woman's prison. So this woman asked the question, both those things. Should his crimes be recorded as a woman, and
Yeah.
should he be in a women's prison. And the response was, from Lisa and Andy, I believe fundamentally in people's rights to self-identify. I believe the Gender Recognition Act strikes the wrong balance in relation to that. Crimes that are recorded should be recorded as that person wishes, having gone through that process. This is what we should just do whatever the criminal wants. Trans women are women and trans men are men and should be accommodated in the prison of their choosing. And bear in mind, this isn't just some random abstract example. This is Christopher Wharton was specifically mentioned. What should happen in this exact case?
So,
and her answer was, we should do what the child rapist wants.
Right. Well, so let's separate those two things, because I think it would be very easy to argue, and we probably have done on this podcast and will again, that someone convicted of sexual offences against women, frankly, regardless of the age of those women, identifying as a woman in order to go to a women's prison and therefore being in a position where they could sexually abuse other women is crazy. It's a very easy thing to unpick. But at least it's happening in the here and now. The concept of rewriting history and saying that you always were this other gender, I think is just lunacy of the highest order. And
we can take this in different levels as well. So there's not just he transitioned, I think, afterwards, after he was convicted. But even if he transitioned beforehand, should those crimes be recorded under women or under male or female?
I think
that's another thing as well. I don't particularly care if when he transitioned.
Well, trans women are criminals. Is the phrase that's going to...
That's, if we ever get famous, that's going to get quoted around everywhere. Just that snippet.
You know what I'm saying? Not all of them. You get what I'm saying? This is not just men and women that can be criminals. It's trans women can be as well. And so, if there is a trans woman racist, where did racist come from? Trans woman rapist, then, well, but again, that even that distorts the definition of rape, doesn't it? Because I don't want to get into the actual nitty-gritty of the definitions of these things, but it is about penetration, and so rape by its it's sexual assault if it's something else. Rape by definition can only be a man to a woman in the strict legal definition. Now, that's not to say that they won't tear these laws up and change them if they get into power, or they won't influence the current guys in power to make those changes. I wouldn't be surprised if actually the legal definitions of these things did start to change. Would you?
No, this is classic. So I remember we did a podcast a few weeks ago about the differences between the left and the right, and I think one of the examples I gave was that the left only tend to look at one side of any argument.
Right.
They don't tend to look at the opposite side. So when they're talking about rights and transgender rights, that to them trumps everything.
They're looking at the rights of that minority group itself, rather than the effects of recognising those rights.
Everybody. So, for example, and again, this is another one of these contradictions. So if a trans woman can't go in a male prison because they're worried that men will attack them.
Yes.
Why is that a legitimate concern? So it's a legitimate concern that a trans woman doesn't want to get abused by men.
Yeah.
Or by people with XY chromosomes. Why is that not a legitimate concern for women in women's prisons that don't want someone with XY chromosomes coming in?
Yeah.
Why is that okay for one and not for the other?
Yeah. Well, I think we could spend all day listing the types of problems with all of those arguments. It's full of contradictions. But yeah, I was aware that there's a lot of these kind of trans policy nonsense statements.
It's the new abortion for want of a better term. You know, abortion was like the litmus test, particularly in America.
Well, I was about to say, not in the UK. It never has.
It's never been as much as it is in America, but it's that kind of issue in that this is the.
I think you're right. This
is the litmus test now.
For what? For gateway to the special club.
Yeah, I think so. There's
the woke test.
A certain type of there's a certain type of woke.
This is wokery though, isn't it?
It is.
That's
and these people they are massively associated with the left,
yes.
And I mean the proper left as well this time, not just people who think they're left who are a little bit right wing that we've talked about in the past. The actual people who are who would like socialism, communism.
Yeah.
These people.
So Lisa Nandy is doing this purely to call votes.
Yes, I would think so.
Yeah,
I think so. I think, and the roar that the crowd gave her as soon as she said that, which was just
a crowd of who? Those two's at a Lisa Nandy rally.
Or Lisa Nandy fans.
But you're talking.
But no, it was just all. It was natural. None of them just went. Ooh.
But you're talking Labour members.
Yes.
So not an accurate cross section.
No, but these are
the country.
You mentioned that these are people who are supposed to be perhaps a little bit more Blairite than the regular Labour members, but they didn't suddenly go, oh, hang on a second, what's she saying here?
That's my concern.
They were way giving her a big cheer. It was outrageous.
Okay.
Shall we move on to?
Well, I want to link. I think
Berganator.
is that a recognised term?
Just came to me.
Okay. Yeah, because I think you've got a point about the Labour membership. You've given me a hint about this.
Well, so this was, and what was possibly what was annoying me most about this was the fact that it wasn't annoying anybody else.
That's fine. That means we get the exclusive on this one.
We shouldn't, because it's kind of happened. I mean, I spoke to this about you a couple of weeks ago. Do you fancy another scotch while I ramble on about this?
That's absolutely fine. And in true Father Jack fashion, I have.
Oh, you have a.
You have happened to have
Balvenie double wood. I have some of that at home. It's fantastic.
Double wood.
Okay, so you may have heard about Richard Bergen's, I think he calls it his peace pledge, which is...
Oh really? I didn't realise it had that name.
It certainly involves the word peace.
Right.
So he has this idea that Labour members should be consulted. Should there be a Labour government, and should he be Deputy Prime Minister?
On war. On matters of war.
On matters of military intervention.
Right. So he went that far. It wasn't just going to war. It was military intervention.
He's specific. Well, I mean, again.
Cheers.
Your house, sir. So he used the words military intervention. Whether he's been watering it down and backpedaling it a little bit, but the basic premise of this policy is that Labour members will be polled before anything like this happens.
Right.
And then
put it to the membership.
We will then say, this is the Labour position on going to war with Syria.
And we're talking about. Are we talking about whether when they're in power, out of power, both? Doesn't matter.
I guess it wouldn't really.
It doesn't really matter, does it?
Doesn't really matter. I guess it wouldn't matter as much if they were out of power, but they would still. So his point.
But he wanted to make this Labour Party policy.
Yes.
That if in matters of military intervention, you go and poll the membership.
And all most people were saying about it is, well, that's a bit unworkable, isn't it?
Right.
I don't care if it's completely workable. You're selling military intervention.
Oh, because you have to pay your £20 or whatever.
You're filling Labour's coffers in order for influence over military action. It's just so awful and evil and morally corrupt. And nobody's saying anything about it.
This is cash for influence.
This is cash for bombs, or it's And let's not even go where So, for example, depending on where the military intervention was, if it was let's intervene in Syria or somewhere, then they'll probably say, okay, yeah, we're not going to, because he was making the point of it shouldn't be that easy to go to war, and we want to make it harder.
He was trying to make it harder. Was his point?
Well, that's what he was saying.
Right.
But let's say it was okay. Palestine needs a little bit of help against Israel. well, they'll be jumping up and down, wouldn't they? Yeah, to let's go in there hard and fast. Can you imagine
but this,
that?
Right. So so there's the absolute. I couldn't agree with you more about the moral repugnance of such an idea.
It's incredible.
But this is encouraging. You have to be a Labour member
and
to have a say.
So it starts off with war, and then it will be education, then it will be the NHS,
yes.
And it's your vote on once every 4 or 5 years. Well, it matters a little bit. It gets us into power. After that, you need to pay us £25 a year or whatever, and
in order to take part
in democracy,
in specific. Well, this is policy change or interventions or whatever. Yeah, that just, you can expand that out to absolutely everything. Well, but you see, that starts getting.
It's a bit 1984.
I was about to say this is whether you call it Soviet Russia or communist China. This is the party. Are you a member of the party? Because if you are, then you get treated differently.
And that's where I'm getting at. There's the party members, and there's the proles in 1984, and this is very much that. You're either in or you're out.
And the only way that you can have any kind of say is if you're a member.
If you're a member and you're paying us money, in which case we get bigger and bigger, and it's awful.
Yeah, I certainly have not heard any argument against it like that.
I mean, so Dan Hodges, to give him his due, was straight up there saying, hold up, Labour members, not constituents, not everyone, not voters, not everyone, Labour members.
Not a referendum.
Yeah. So he picked up on it reasonably early on.
Right.
But nobody really.
But he didn't take it as far as you've said.
No.
In arguing the next logical step, the outcome.
Not that I have seen. No.
Yeah.
Not that I have seen.
No, that's a good observation.
So it was. I mean, so he obviously made the point that it was wrong, but he didn't take it to the extent that we have. In that, okay, well, where does it end? What comes next?
Well, so that's kind of.
If you apply this across the board, what happens?
Have you got any other stuff you want to talk about Labour leadership candidates?
Not really.
I can segue here.
Yeah, so I mean, they're all pretty awful. Rebecca Long Bailey is the joke candidate, but she,
I don't mean this to be anything to hold you by, but right now, who do you think is going to win? Because it's changed a lot. The polls of Labour members have changed a lot.
I still think it will be Keir Starmer.
Right.
But I wouldn't be massively surprised if Long Bailey got in.
Yeah.
I think that there only needs to be a couple more of Corbyn saying, vote for Long Bailey, and then that'll be it, I think. Or McDonnell.
Bergen was saying that Corbyn's got a long political career left. Did you see this? I didn't see any recording of it, but I saw it quoted. He's saying, he's got 10 years on Bernie Sanders. His political career is far from over. Just the 2 general elections he's lost.
And
the last one
eternal.
resounding. Yeah. Well, exactly. Are you advocating that I
think you should rejoin, so to get your military influence as well.
I'd have 2 reasons.
As choosing the next.
So I wanted to take this, and I'm going to use the military intervention as the way to get there.
Okay.
Because you can argue that the reason for one of the largest military interventions of the last 50 years was caused by a special advisor or a member of Downing Street staff.
Okay, I was trying to think of 50
Iraq
years. I'm
War.
thinking of Vietnam or Iraq.
Okay.
Iraq 2.
Iraq 2.
And you mentioned Downing Street.
Yes.
Special advisor.
I'm going for Alistair Campbell.
Campbell.
Going for Alistair Campbell here.
Right.
I think it's slightly unfair, if in any way anyone could ever be unfair to Alistair Campbell. He's not the only one, obviously, but he was the communications director. His job was to communicate.
And he hasn't shown any remorse or rolled back on anything.
No, not at all. And look, clever guy, excellent communicator, can spin his way out of of any situation. Certainly the shine has been lost over the last 4 or 5 years, not least because of the Brexit.
I mean, he's gone a bit mad over Brexit, hasn't he? He's got a bit AC grailing.
Brexit derangement syndrome is taking its toll. There's a tarnish now. Okay, whereas he was the master, wasn't he? At this stuff. There's other figures as well. Blair's chief of staff was Jonathan Powell, I think, at the time, and he had a political pedigree. I think his father worked for Thatcher or whatever. It's all an insider's game. All of this, but we've got
You're specifically mentioning
people
unelected people
that
here,
are
aren't you?
not elected. Okay.
Having influence. Is this your angle?
I'm going to talk about Dominic Cummings now. Okay. And ever since it was announced that he would be walking through the doors of Number 10 in his scruffy clothes, I'm saying this dressed like this, it's not like I dress smartly, hated by the Guardianistas, by the left, absolutely despised for his brain.
A lot of the media hate him, and I love the way that he handles them. When they try and doorstep him and try and speak to him when he's like walking around London.
He was quoting. See, you don't have kids, so you didn't get the stuff he was saying the other day. This is only like a week ago or whatever when they doorstepped him, and he started quoting from a children's TV show called PJ Masks.
Right.
And he just started quoting the theme tune and the stuff that's said in PJ Masks. PJ Masks, they'll sort it out. They'll do that. And I forget the exact stuff he said, but it was equivalent of just padding for time, and just he does it obviously entirely on purpose. He talks nonsense at them because he doesn't value their opinion in any way, shape, or form.
I love the contempt that he gives.
It's
them.
Contempt. It's utter contempt.
Is that the best argument you've got?
And he
really thought that through.
But also, he knows how to play the legacy media, the corporate press, if you will, with such aplomb. It was that conversation of him being doorstepped and him giving not a coherent answer, but not a Joe Biden not coherent answer, but a deliberately incoherent response, was then the subject of the daily politics, whatever the BBC lunchtime politics show is, or whatever. One of their topics was that. And, there's someone on there defending, when you've got kids and the CBeebies is on their background, you come out spouting this stuff. It's like, that wasn't it at all. He obviously knows his program, and that's fine. He's got kids, whatever. But this was being deliberately obtuse. But I think he knows that this stuff gets picked up and that he's a figurehead of it's not even ridicule, just of, if they're talking about me, then they're not talking about something else. So there's only this is the classic West Wing style. There's only so many column inches to fill. So if they're talking about me, the arguments that they used to make in those days, I'm talking West Wing, the TV show here, was, don't make yourself the story. And also, there's only one man running the show, and it needs to be the illusion that it's the president running everything. That ship has sailed. The demystification of our leaders, that's gone. Largely with your Alistair Campbell's and Tony Blair's. No one could say who John Major's Director of Communications were.
No idea.
Exactly.
No idea.
Exactly. So that time's gone, and it's gone with the new age of digital media. I'm not saying it's not naturally where it should have gone or where it was going to go. But Dominic Cummings makes himself the story deliberately. But recently, it's all been about how can this person possibly have this much power? It wasn't right. So we just had a reshuffle, okay, and the shock part of this reshuffle. I mean, quite a lot of people got fired, including a lot of Brexiteers. Senior members of the cabinet just got fired. Just run of the mill. They weren't the scandals. The in quotes scandal was that the Chancellor of the Exchequer resigned, but it was over special advisors, wasn't it?
Well, he resigned because he was asked to fire all of his, wasn't he?
Mm.
Basically the entire team, from what I understand.
And that they were going to have this joined up group of advisors of both number 10 and number 11. The point here is obviously that, there's the Chancellor is kind of the de facto number 2 in the government. It's a bit odd, isn't it, really? But literally lives next door. Well, it's kind of it's almost one house, isn't it? There's obviously the flats within it of 10 and 11. But the teams have to work closely together, albeit that's not where the Treasury is. The Treasury is... So all these quirks of the British system. But yeah, he went over that, but it was said, all of the commentators were saying this is as much Dominic Cummings firing or causing Sajid Javid to be fired than it was Boris. That he's the puppet master, and
Boris is all...
that Cummings is. That,
right.
How can Cummings have this power, and yada yada yada. None of these people ever whinge when it's their guys in. This is part of my point.
Yeah, so...
This is their system. This is the system that they endorse every day of the year. That someone can be hired, that it is perfectly normal for the Prime Minister to hire people to work in number 10 to be his advisors, his or her advisors.
I mean, I can't remember who this quote is, but this goes something along the lines of there's nothing worse to a socialist than the wrong socialist in charge.
That's a good quote. But you can apply, it doesn't have to be a socialist, you can apply the whole thing.
Statist or whatever.
Yeah.
But another point I'll make is that, and I did tweet this out, in that I think Dominic Cummings is given far too much credit for all the good things and all the bad things that are happening on his watch.
Yes.
And I think he's
spun as this criminal mastermind.
Yeah, and he probably knows he's the figurehead now, and that everything is going to get... So he's going to be the centre of attention on a bunch of stuff. So if he can be the centre of attention for reciting some children's TV thing and not some policy, he probably sees that as a win.
Yes.
I can't get out of being centre of attention.
So I'm
going to mess with you guys. And
yeah.
I'm going to just...
And he is that clever. I mean, I do think he is that clever. I think he's... And I suppose the comparison with Alistair Campbell is a pretty good one from that perspective. Obviously, a lot of political strategy came from Campbell in the Blair years. And I'm not saying that Blair wasn't part of it, or Brown wasn't part of it, or Peter Mandelson wasn't part of that New Labour project as well. But yeah, he's a political strategist as much as he became the director of communications. And Cummings is a political strategist, among other things that he does. But his way of dealing with the media in its current form and playing them in that way is reminiscent of Alistair Campbell's ability to wrap a newspaper around his fingers. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, it's a
different world now, I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, newspapers loved Alistair Campbell, and they can't stand Dominic Cummings. So it is obviously a different relationship.
Yes.
But they're both kind of...
Because he's an outsider.
Yeah, they're both kind of getting what they want.
That's my comparison. I'm not saying that he's loved by the media at all.
I mean, they cannot stand him, and he cannot stand them.
The contempt is real in both directions.
Yeah, I think so.
But the fact that he has power, the fact that anyone else has power, that's a function of our system. I mean, all the civil servants, all the quangos, all the people appointed, they all have power.
Let's take it one step further.
And they're unelected.
What about the newspaper that the Prime Minister reads in the morning, or the TV show that he watches? The newsreader who gives their certain spin on the news.
Their family members.
They're unelected. They have a certain amount of power over the Prime Minister because they're influencing him. And
Dominic Cummings doesn't have to have a hired job. It's easier when he's right there, but he could just be sat at home emailing.
Yeah, is it fine if he's just the Prime Minister's mate and he's on the end of a phone or an email to advise him or something like that?
Let's say that, I'm going to take this even further because Dominic Cummings is a blogger and he likes to write his long blog posts, and he still does. You could write a blog, or I, where we put our ideas forward for how you should run a government department, or how you should run the entire whole shebang, okay? And Boris Johnson or any Prime Minister today
stumbles across
could just read it and enact it. Wouldn't have to get any credit. Wouldn't have to be any money changing hands. You wouldn't even have to talk to the person. Because right now, political ideas are out there for free. You may feel aggrieved by not being credited, or you may just be sitting there going,
I would be rubbing my hands together.
if it were your ideas being put forward, yes, exactly. But that's political influence, because it's decided by the person who's elected, isn't it? And I suppose this is all about questions of how open and honest a politician, someone who can be elected to high office, should ever be, could ever be, about what and who is going to influence them. Does this mean that in elections that the Prime Minister, the people who could be likely to be Prime Minister, should lay out, these are the people who I will have in my team?
Let's take this further as we do. How insulated should our Prime Minister be from the outside world if he's not allowed to be influenced by anything other than his own personal thoughts? Is he allowed to read a book? Is he allowed to listen to the radio? Can he watch TV? Can he go on the internet? Should we give him internet access? You know, it's just crazy. I mean,
this is your system, guys.
Yeah, the issue is the system is ridiculous, and it's not that Dominic Cummings has influence over Boris Johnson. It's that Boris Johnson has that power in the first place.
Yes,
that's the issue,
and that's what I think it shines a light on. But nobody. Well, I think you can shine that light on the flaws in the democratic process, the flaws of having a single person, let alone even 650 of them, that are elected to have power over others, is that each and every one of those can be influenced. Now, when they do it for money, it's called bribery. But there are plenty of other forms of influence that are not against the law. And lobbying and all this kind of stuff.
Or just, maybe there's an intern at number 10 that Boris Johnson quite likes.
Fancies.
Who, well, doesn't matter. And might occasionally just say, well, that's a bad idea. And that might influence him.
Yeah.
What's
wrong with that? In this system, what is wrong with that?
Well,
it's no worse than anything else.
Yeah, I think the wrong is in that Boris Johnson has power in the first place. So I'm not saying that that people influencing politicians is good.
So,
but it's the fault lies with the politicians.
So having the system we have, I'm not going to allow you here to just go, well, I wouldn't have it all anyway.
I reject the very premise of your question.
of the government. Yeah. Do you think there should be more transparency in the people working at number 10? Or in any government department, but number 10 being the top, if we start there.
I don't think it'll matter. I don't care.
You care in this scenario.
I genuinely don't think it's going to make a difference.
Okay. Dominic Cummings style, could you make it better? You once said you could make government better.
Yeah, by disrupting and sabotaging everything that it does.
No, you started off by saying you could make it more efficient.
Yeah, because that's my job, and I think I could generally make everybody more efficient. But I qualified that in that I don't think an efficient government is a good one.
No,
because it means they're doing more things and they're screwing with your lives more.
Can you think of a better way, other than wiping the entire system slate clean, of managing these appointed people? There isn't, is there? I mean, short of them, again, the only things that can be done are American style, hauling them in front of select committees and things like that. And all you're doing there is subjecting them to a group of people that have been elected that don't have a good opinion.
And then it comes out that Donald Trump has been on the phone to Sean Hannity every morning for the past whatever, in some unofficial role. It's gonna happen if you start to you drive it underground.
You drive it underground
the same way that
black market.
if you ban encryption, the average person is going to suffer because of it, and terrorists are going to use a pen and paper. It's just, you're not going to stop it.
You're just gonna hide it from view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And arguably, it'll be worse if it's underground.
While we're talking about public officials, this is the only way I can think of to.
It's another segue.
Yep. I want to talk about Mark Carney, the outgoing. What is his actual title? Governor. Governor of the Bank. I was going to say head of the bank. Governor of the Bank of England, our central bank. We really should do a podcast on central banks and fiat currencies.
That's a right-wing title if ever I heard of. Governor.
Governor.
It's all about order and control.
Governance. Governance as opposed to ownership. Yeah.
And the whole government itself is.
But hang on.
A right sounding term, isn't it? I don't want to get back into.
No, I like this. I like the diversion because I knew what I was going to say until this moment. Chairman Mao. That's a very corporate title.
Chairman Mao.
Chairman. You said governor was right wing.
Yeah, so it's
chairman. But I suppose that is ownership. You don't have a governor of a company. You have a chairman of a company.
Yeah,
probably has a stake in it.
I'm the chairman of all the means of production in this entire country of 1 billion people.
Good, so we've resolved that.
Yeah,
we can move
so
on.
I think chairman left, governor right.
But companies aren't left wing. It's just that you own them. If you're the chairman, probably, or you have got a stake.
Well, so some companies are left wing, I would say. Is the NHS? Can you?
It's not a company. Oh, right. Let's not go there. We're gonna end up down that rabbit hole like we always go every bloody week. Anyway, Mark Carney. Mark Carney, outgoing governor of the Bank of England, who was in charge during the last 5 years, and specifically over this Brexit period. So he was there in the run up to the referendum. He's been there ever since. So this whole period between
instrumental in Project Fear, you might say.
Project Fear. So I'm not going to make a point over how much power he should have. That's the Dominic Cummings angle. But it was in the news. This is a few weeks ago now. Him popping up in media outlets, talking about how things aren't as bad now and things are going to be a bit more rosy, and it's a good job I did this and a good job I did that.
Yeah, it wasn't framed as, wasn't I wrong? Look at all my predictions and how I was wrong about every one of them.
No, and again, in terms of an observation that you didn't find in any media outlet whatsoever, was why on earth did you not say you were going to do the things that you have done in order to mitigate what you considered to be the negative impacts of holding a referendum and losing it, and then actually leaving the EU?
Well, yeah, because let's unpick that. So if he's saying that the reason we're not in as bad place as he said we would be is because of lots of things that he's done.
And he's now going, isn't it great that I did those things?
Yeah. So if that's his premise and that's his argument. So when you made those predictions, there are a whole bunch of things that could have happened. The things that you were going to do should have been the easiest to predict. Out of absolutely everything, the stuff that you should have got right is what I'm going to do in these circumstances.
Or are you saying that you didn't know you were going to do any of it? Does that make you good at your job?
Or are these things just are they just these magic new things that he's done that didn't exist? These strategies and tactics didn't exist in 2016 when he made these predictions. I've just invented these. Utter rubbish.
But to predict, this is a classic counterfactual argument when trying to prove something a policy of yours is working. And I was listening to some podcasts the other day with Christopher Snowdon of the IEA.
Okay.
He's great on all the nanny state stuff. So talking about smoking and vaping, sugar tax, all this kind of thing. And a news story will pop up, and it's based on some study that not even peer reviewed. Even if we ignore the flaws in the peer review process, and it'll be some model that had a counterfactual in it that was, well, if we did things like this, we'd end up here, but because we introduced this policy, we did things like this, we're down there. But it's a false premise. Comparing the two positions is wrong on so many levels, because it probably wouldn't have happened. Could it have happened? Yes, it could, but it wasn't going to, because you did these other things. You were going to do these other things. That's what Mark Carney and the Treasury are asking us to believe, that they knew no way of solving these problems, only they did when they happened.
Well, there was, and I can't remember the specifics, but there was one that I think it might have been Snowden who mentioned it as well. It was about like kind of alcohol pricing in Scotland, and there was a counterfactual that said we think that this is going to happen, and because of that, this crime or whatever is now,
it was heart attacks, wasn't it?
Yeah, whatever it is now at this rate, and have now fallen. It's like, well, actually, no, they've risen since that policy is
utter nonsense. Yeah. But you can go back to Carney. If you don't have a lot of people working for you specifically, you run teams, but you're not running a whole company or anything like that.
No, I have like maybe 20 or 25 almost.
But if one of them came to you with a plan, if you asked one of them, what would happen if I adopted this policy at this time, and you asked them to come up with a report for you of what would happen, and they came up with this report and it said all this stuff's going to happen, all this bad stuff is going to happen, but then you were like, oh, God, right, but I still really need to do this. This is still the right thing to do. I have to do this. And then you enacted it. And then it turned out that none of these things came to pass. And it turned out that this person had made these predictions based on doing nothing at all. Of not acting. You'd fire that person. If this person forecasted that they would do nothing, or they would do the opposite of what they actually did. If you said to him, so you've done things to counteract the negatives, have you, now? Oh yeah, because they were negative. Then they'd be fired.
I mean, so in real life, it never really gets to that stage, because you always have things like, I might say, right, I'm going to change the branch strategy, or I'd like to change the branch strategy, I want to do this.
Do you want to there's a terminology you're using here for our listener and our viewer.
Okay.
Branch strategy is not a common parlance.
It's not. Okay, so
out of our way.
So deployment process, how we get software live, for example.
Let's say talking about software.
Yeah. So let's
a branch is about define branch for.
Okay, so when you're writing software, you will all write your code and you'll dump it in a place, and like an online repository. And what will happen is you can branch off from this central code base, and you might have one branch for development work and another branch for that will become live very soon. So you might say, right, we're going to work on some stuff here. We're then going to go back into our master branch, and then we're going to go live.
A branch is a string of changes.
Yeah, into production. And there are lots and lots of different strategies you can have around this. And so it might be that I want to make changes to our strategy for going live, or for example, the way that we deploy software. So we can,
the way you roll it out.
The way we roll it out. And so there are often times when I might want to make a couple of changes, and people say, "Oh no, that's a bad idea." And you say, "Okay, why is that a bad idea?" Well, because this will happen. So, are you saying that if I did that, there'd be no way for us to mitigate against that?
Yes.
Well, I could do this. Right. Okay, then do that, and that's where it ends.
Yes.
It never gets to the stage where reports are written on reports and all this data is gathered and all that kind of stuff. It never gets to the point.
Because there's a way if there is a way of mitigating something, you do it.
Yeah, and at any stage, people are always questioning stuff. So with Project Fear, they're like, brilliant, this is all going to go wrong. Yeah, stick that out. Nobody's challenging them and saying, hold up a second, we're in charge here. We need to make sure that the best outcome happens, regardless of the result of the referendum. So we need to give a truthful outcome. The whole intention and the desire behind it is completely wrong. It wasn't done in good faith.
Now the Leave campaign won. As far as we're aware, not a rigged election. no Russian bots influencing me.
No.
Do you think they did a good job at... I don't want to say, well, the evidence is, of course, they won. Do you think they did a good job at challenging those assumptions, those reports, in the way that you've just described? Or do you think they did it in a different way? They just went with positive versus negative. As opposed to saying that they haven't mitigated those risks and they would.
Yeah, and the question was never asked, do you think the people producing these reports want the outcomes to be good or bad? What do you think their goal is?
I think they probably did some of that. I think they probably said, well, of course, they're just Remainers and they're just establishment figures.
I don't remember. I remember establishment figures, yes, but I don't remember people questioning the faith of it. Was all that, well, they all mean well. And it's like, no, they don't mean well. They don't mean well at all.
They didn't go far enough.
No, they didn't stick the knife in and twist it around a bit, which is probably what they should have done.
Yeah, well, half them. But again, that's because a lot of them are statist, and there was conservative, blue against blue.
Correct.
They didn't want to go too far. They were going to have to make up with some of these people. They were going to have to run these departments and run these things.
And
that's the whole problem, isn't it? It's like, clear them out of the dissenters.
Drain the swamp.
Yeah.
Another reason why they're never as good at arguing for these things is because as soon as they get on to what you and I would class as being the right arguments, they're on a slippery slope because they're going to have to go against what they're arguing for everything else. So you and I would argue against it because it's statism. And we can prove that the state doing anything is a bad idea, and they do everything badly. And even if they could do stuff wrong, well, it's morally wrong that they should have power over people. As soon as you start playing that argument, people start questioning. Well, if this is wrong, then what about all the stuff that you do?
Do you want a good current example of that, though?
Go for it.
Free ports.
Okay.
So I did a short tweet on this. I tweeted something that the new Chancellor of the Exchequer. Rishi Sunak, have I said that right?
I think so. I've only seen it written down.
I just keep thinking he's a Vulcan. It's Sunak. That's a Vulcan name, isn't it? Do you think? I don't mean that disparagingly. It's just that, or maybe Romulan actually. Sunak.
So, yeah,
that's a Romulan commander, actually, isn't
it?
So I'm sorry, Vulcans. That's a Romulan name. But he tweeted something out. I think after, only like on the day or whatever. But maybe it was before. Maybe because he was Chief Secretary to the Treasury. He was like the number 2 in the...
he was reasonably high up.
He was one of those. So he was kind of in cabinet already. And he tweeted out a classic preformed statement on the government policy. And this one was about free ports and how it was going to boost the economy and this and that and whatever and free trade.
I know exactly where you're going.
And I was able... I mean, I can't remember my exact tweet, but I was able to say... if this is so good for free ports, imagine if we had a free country. But I put, because free ports was like, it's been made as one word, so I put free country as one word to kind of underline it.
Yeah.
How can you argue that if you take a region, even if it's just a city, and remove all of these things, all of this government, this is what you're doing. You're removing tax, you're removing government, you're removing regulation. If it's so good for the port, for the city, they're not even just saying that it has to be a coastal city. Free ports can be inland, I think, as well. How can it not be the right thing to do for everywhere?
And this is why the left often are better at arguing than the right or the centrists, because they will say, well, of course. So the NHS is a good
all
thing.
Government is good.
The NHS is a good thing.
It's a very consistent argument. All government is good.
People will always, oh yeah, of course I believe in the NHS. And so, well, if the state should run the NHS, why can't the state run everything? If the state running the NHS and running education is a good thing, why not do it for everything else? And right wingers will often struggle.
Totally, because they want to try and make a bit of a free market argument because they know that they need the money to pay for their statist bits. But it's very difficult to make a mixed economy argument. I mean, arguably the closest we've come is Boris. Or we've talked about this before. He makes a good mixed economy argument.
So that's who's the old guy who's now a Telegraph blogger, I believe. In Margaret Thatcher's day, he was
Tebbit, Lord Tebbit.
He does. Well, there are 5 things that the government is in control of, and it's education, NHS, blah, blah, blah. That's it. We can't.
But other than that,
we can't afford, because his argument is that all these things are good, but we need to pay for them, and the only way to pay for them is for having a free market. So it almost sounds like, wouldn't it be great if we? It almost sounds like I would love to if we could be completely socialist, but we can't. Therefore, we have to have this mixed economy. That's kind of his argument.
So it's not even the managerial argument, is it? It's I think we're being
practical. It is. I
think we're being practical here.
It's a practical point of view.
You can only have a certain amount of socialism.
Yes, that's exactly what he's saying.
And socialism in these 5 things is fine. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I haven't read Tebbit for years now. Actually.
No, I haven't for a while. But
yeah, but he loves that argument. Yeah. Going back to Carney again. I think it's important to know that no commentator, no journalist, no one has sat him down and said, "Why didn't you say you were going to do those things?" It's not a difficult question, is it? It's not. I don't think I'm being too clever.
Yeah, or and us Brexiteers and Leave voters had confidence that everything would be okay, and that you were good enough.
That you probably would do some things
to mitigate some of these dangers. Why didn't you have confidence in yourself?
Yeah, exactly.
Why didn't you think you were going to do any of this?
Yeah, definitely.
But no, the corporate press, the legacy media never question people.
No. Well, that's all I've got. We've gone from Labour leadership candidates to Dominic Cummings and whether appointees of the Prime Minister should have any influence, to a very key appointee of the Bank of England doing his nonsense with Project Fear and the so-called forecasts of these things. I haven't got anything else. You got anything else?
No, I think we should probably end it there.
Okay.
Thank you for watching and listening to Sounding Board. You can find us on YouTube. Click subscribe and click the little bell, which means that you'll get notified of whenever we release anything.
Go to soundingboard.com. That's our website, new and improved. We don't blog very often at the moment, but all our episodes are
I did recently.
Did you? We need to blog
recently,
more.
so.
But we're, as you can tell, we're better at just, gabbling. Tune in next time.